Hi, so I'm doing something a little bit different today. I've been doing so much crochet lately, I wanted to switch it up and do a knitting project. So I went out shopping a couple weeks ago now and I picked up some new yarn, one of which is this. So it's this nice kind of foresty green color. And this is Lion Brand Wool Ease, and the color is Kale. So it's this pretty green color, and it's got some speckling in whites and browns and a bit of black, I think. So it looked nice and cozy. And the project that I want to do with this is a cabled headband. So I want to keep this project simple. I'm not using an actual pattern. I'm just gonna kind of make things up as I go along. I'm gonna start out by knitting a 10 by 10 swatch just so that I have a frame of reference for how wide I need to make this. This yarn is a super bulky weight and they're suggesting a knitting needle size of 13, which is 9mm. And I happen to have these. So these are 16-inch circular needles, and I tend to knit with circular needles rather than straight needles anyways. Just they're not as long, so I find that they don't get in the way as much. It's also nice if you kind of pause partway through a project because you can just kind of hang your project from the string and you don't have to worry about it sliding off your needles. So anyway, not necessary, but this is what I have, so this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to start off by knitting the swatch and then I'll come back and get started on the project. All right, so I finished my little swatch here and I like the way it's come out. It's very, very cozy looking. I do think I want this to be a little bit wider though, so I'm thinking probably 14 stitches should be wide enough because I don't want it to be super wide because I'm not making a full hat, but I do want it to be wide enough that it will fully cover my ears. And then I'm also trying to decide how many rows I want to have between my cables. And this is 10 rows, so I'm thinking maybe 20 because the cables are going to kind of gather in. So right now I'm thinking 14 stitches wide and then 20 rows between cables. And I'll see how that turns out. I might adjust as I go. But that is my thought right now. And as you can see, I'm doing this in stockinette stitch. And I also wanted to say, I think this is the first knitting video that I've done. So please let me know if you would like to see more knitting videos, either by liking this video or leaving me a comment. So I'm gonna rip this swatch apart and then get started on the actual project. Sorry for the weird shot here. You're gonna get a nice close-up view of my fuzzy socks. So I'm starting off with a long tail cast on because I want this to be stretchy. And let me know if you would like to see a tutorial on the long tail cast on. It's pretty much the only way that I ever start a knitting project. I find it a lot more versatile than just a standard cast on. Anyway, so I'm going to cast on 14 stitches. And then to start off with, I'm thinking I want to have the seam in the middle between cables. So I'm going to start off just doing 10 rows and then I'll do a cable row and then start into 20 rows between cables. And then I'll end with another 10 rows. I'm going to keep this super easy and just do the whole thing in stockinette stitch. So I'll just start with a knit row and just go back and forth between knit and purl. that is the first 10 rows done. And I think I'm happy with that width. I think that will work well. So next up, I'm gonna do a cable. So I don't actually own a cable needle. Typically what I do is I'll just take a paper clip and open it up and then slip my stitches onto that to hold them. So that's what I'm doing. So I want to take the first half of my stitches, so that'll be 7, and move them onto my makeshift cable needle. And then I'll just close that up and move it behind. And then I'll knit the next 7 stitches. And then we'll see how difficult this is because my cable's fairly wide. Okay, I am not a professional knitter, so keep that in mind, please. So it looks a bit of a mess right now, but this is where we're at. And my stitches are pretty tight, so I'm gonna have to loosen that up a bit. So the next row is gonna be a purl row. I'm actually gonna cable on row 20. So I'm gonna have 19 rows in between my cables, just because I wanna have all of my cable rows on knit rows rather than purl rows, just to keep things easier. I'm gonna go ahead and knit the next 19 rows, and then I will check in again on the next cable. So I've done the 19 rows, and this is where we're at so far. So again, this will be where the seam is. So I've just done kind of half, and then the cable, and then that will be the full width between cables. So I'm at the point where I'm going to do another cable row, and I'll just do the same thing I did last time. So just move the first 7 stitches onto a cable needle, put that behind, stitch the next 7, and then go back and stitch the first 7. I'm thinking with how long this is at this point, I'm just gonna have 4 cables, and then again end with the half length and stitch up the seam. So I'm gonna just keep going with this, and I'll check in when I've made a little more progress. All right, I'm done with the stitching, and that's what it's looking like right now. Sorry, I'm kind of losing the light in here. It's getting later in the afternoon. It's about 3:30. What I ended up doing for my last couple of cables was to actually move the stitches from my makeshift cable needle back on to my actual needle, because I was finding that the stitches were coming out too small and they were very tight. Yeah, the last couple of cables went a little bit more smoothly. I've got my 4 cables, and then I have 10 rows after my last cable. So what I'm gonna do now is just cast off the last row, and then I'm just gonna leave a bit of a tail so that I can then stitch the first row to the last row to make this a circle. So I'm just making sure that my piece is twisted properly so that my cables are all sitting properly, and then I'm sandwiching the 2 ends together, right sides together. I've just got my, where is that? I've just got the end of my yarn on a needle, and I'm just gonna stitch through my stitches, going back and forth to connect the 2 sides together. So I'm just going to finish this off with a knot, and then weave in the ends. Okay, so that's the whole thing finished. Turn that right side out. This might require some blocking because it is rolling up quite a bit, but I'm also going to be wearing it against my head, so it might flatten out just from where. But let's try this on and see how it looks. So this is how it turned out. I will say I think it could have benefited from a couple more cables. I think maybe 6 or 8 instead of 4 would have looked a little better. I think the cable effect is kind of lost because there's so few of them. I think I will eventually block this just so that you can see the shape a little bit better, because it is curling in quite a bit and looking fairly bulky. I'm hoping that blocking will help. I think overall it's not bad. Just, yeah, I think a couple more cables would help, because right now it does have just these kind of plain flat areas, and it's hard to see unless you are kind of looking all the way around that there are more cables there. Not calling this a fail, but I will say if you are going to make this for yourself, I might up the number of cables that you do. So probably 8 would be a good number, so just do a cable every 10 rows rather than every 20. So I definitely think this has potential. And it might also look cute and define the cables a little bit more if you wanted to run a stripe of reverse stockinette down the center. So there's lots of variations that you could do with this. You could also, instead of making the whole thing a cable, just cable 6 stitches. So just bring 3 behind rather than the full 7, and just do a cable down the center rather than having the whole thing be a cable. So once again, let me know if you would like to see more knitting content from me. I've been really enjoying doing the crochet, but I do really enjoy knitting as well. So I would love to hear if more knitting is something that you would be interested in seeing as well. So I will wrap things up here. Make sure that you remember to like and subscribe, and please check out the other videos on the channel for more crafty content. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye.